Hello and welcome to the Sacred Gates. My name is Laura and welcome to the channel. It's been a few weeks since I did a video and I'm sorry about that, but I'm back and I wanted to do a video on distraction, a talk on distraction because it's something that is so chronic in this world. It's almost as if we are living lives of chronic distraction. And I think what happens is that we don't realize that distraction is because we're suffering. We're wanting to get away from something, so we distract ourselves. And quite often those distractions are not skillful distractions. Yet if we're not aware that we are suffering, if we have not yet observed that we are suffering, then we're not aware of the reason of why we're distracting ourselves, even though it's clearly coming from our own feelings and wanting to avoid those feelings. It's not a conscious experience for so many anymore. And thus many people are living out lives of chronic level distraction, and they could very well easily have led a life of distraction away from things that are going on inside that come up through a feeling of suffering. And so if one is not observing that one is suffering, then one does not, realize that they're in a process of distraction because of that suffering. And that desire to distract yourself is only there because of an unmet kind of need inside and an unawareness of suffering in itself. But once you realize that you are suffering and that you are distracting yourself because you're suffering, that's one thing. And the next step is, without that step, there's not much you can do. You're still unaware and you haven't evolved yet to have that level of awareness. And then the next is to know that you are suffering and to go look. And to look and to say, well, yes, I am suffering. I do feel this suffering. I'm still going to distract myself. And I think the next level then is, to say, well, okay, yes, I am distracting myself because I'm feeling suffering. I don't like these feelings that I'm having. And now I'm going to investigate these feelings. That might stop you from distracting yourself. Or you may still distract yourself, but do it consciously. And you do it with awareness. You do it with your observational abilities there. And then I think there is another level, which is when you look, and I think this is a really important level for many who are practitioners, which you might be, so it's relevant to you, hopefully, is that it's really, really critical if you're finding that distractions are getting in the way of your training, of your path, of your spiritual goals, of you having a relationship with your spiritual self, then it's important that you investigate the distractions that you are using and that you have an issue with because they're causing you to suffer. So you need to look at whether the distractions are actually working. Are they actually, because there's an assumption made, in a sense, consciously or unconsciously, depending on where you're at with your distractions, that these distractions are working, but they're not because they're distractions. So they're only working they're not working at all, but there's a sense that they're working for a short amount of time, but then you need to do it again and again and again. Kind of sounds like the vaccine a little bit, not really working. So you got to do it again and again and again. And so it's not really working. So it's really important that we as practitioners look at what is actually happening. Is this comfort that I'm trying to get from this act that's distracting me from this greater level of suffering, is it actually helping me not to feel suffering? Or is it really working? Am I getting comfort? And then you need to look at, well, comfort. Most people distract themselves with something that makes them feel comfortable. And so when you distract yourself with something that makes you feel comfortable and you're a practitioner, you need to question yourself and say, is this really bringing me comfort? Is this making me feel comfortable or not? Am I really comfortable, or am I just distracted and actually experiencing more anxiety in this kind of, quote unquote, comfort, place of comfort? Is this just like another illusion? And if so, do I want to, how long am I going to know that this is this comfort, this distraction I'm in right now is an illusion, yet still do it? Do I need to spend time doing it very consciously so that I can bring myself to something better, which is back to your practice? So it may be that you need to practice intentionally, you need to practice consciously your distraction so that you can come to know the illusion fully that you're choosing to use to distract you from something that it doesn't actually, which is just another illusion that doesn't really work. So then you start to see, everything's kind of like a theater setup. There's a stage, there's also a backstage, and there's the parking out the back. It's all just kind of been set up. It's all pretend. And so we need to be able to see through these distractions, because if you look at the way life's set up, so much is set up just for distraction. I mean, you can go out and, go to a place that seems to be set up for commerce and things that we need. But most of the time, a lot of all that stuff is just completely unnecessary. So much of the consumerism and the cycles of consumerism and materialism are completely unnecessary. And so there are so many distractions for whatever ails you, and we use them. You might be trying to give up something that's not good for you, that's become a habit, and you need a distraction from the suffering you feel from having given that up. Or you may be approaching some work that you are afraid of, that you believe you're not capable of doing, and you find you're distracting yourself from that. And so there's just continuously, and you can use different distractions if you observe your life, yourself, or people around you, but I'm sure you've got enough of your own distractions to observe those yourself, is that, you have various different ones, and that you can see things starting, you can see habits beginning, and depending on your level of inner strength, you need to cut those short if you feel like they're going to cut in on your practice. Because essentially, everybody is suffering, and we're all in different levels of awareness of that. And when you realize that you're suffering, you really need to look at the things that you've been using to distract yourself from that suffering and really question whether they are really, really working. And if you're on a path of spiritual practice and wanting to know your spiritual self doesn't really want much to do with those things. Your higher self, doesn't want those things for you. And there's a higher self within all things, and the higher self understands that we are at the level we're at, but the higher self always wants our highest aspect of consciousness to come through us as much as possible, to live out our spiritual mission. And that is not to, spend every time you sit on the toilet looking on your phone, or it's not to, just eat food every time you feel a little bit upset about something, and it's not to do these things. Your higher self is not interested in those things for you. And so you need to bring your consciousness into those moments so that you can question the elusive nature and really question whether they are serving you or not, so that you can start to change and bring more of your practice in, so that your practice isn't just something that you're doing XYZ minutes per day, that you try to expand your practice, and which really means inviting your spiritual self more and more, embodying it more and more into more parts of your day, so that you can get to know it better. It can influence your life. It can bring in its actual skills and abilities, because the problem is the more you distract yourself, the weaker you become. Those distractions, that actual act of distracting yourself, it doesn't build resources. It doesn't make you more responsible. It doesn't allow you to respond from a spiritual place in your life. In fact, it makes it much harder for your spiritual self to come through because you're just kind of in that distraction, chronic distraction mode, which is really quite closed off if you can map that from your spiritual self, from your highest consciousness or higher bodies. And so we want to make sure, if you are still distracting, that bring in as much of your spiritual self, even if it's just with one key distraction, because all distractions lead to more distractions. They transfer across your life, just as more time spent with your sacred spiritual self brings more of that into your life. And then what happens is the more you bring that into your life, even though you might have an aversion to that, the more you bring it in, the more it will help you to deal with those other areas of your life that have been consumed by distraction, and allow you to get some more of that power back into your life, because that's what the spiritual self does. It allows us to transcend the densities of this reality, which have and are heavily focused on distraction. I mean, incredibly so, if you really just look at how now technology has influenced our minds, and our brains have been wired to this technology. So it's incredibly effective when we do minimize distractions, because they are so destructive and they take up so much of our life. And I was thinking, if you were looking back at your life after you've died, and just say all the areas of your life where you'd colored your choices with distraction would just say yellow, and where you'd spent your time consciously working on yourself and connecting with your spiritual self were green, for example, and you could see this kind of holographic map, what would you want your map to look like? And what is it looking like, though? That's more important, is what are the color ratio there? What is it like for you right now? So if you're not happy as a practitioner with how things are, I suggest really questioning whether the comfort you're trying to find in your distraction, is it actually comfortable? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel comfortable, really, ultimately? And in order to really investigate that, you need to observe yourself while you're distracting yourself. And I think it's a wonderful practice, because it really does inform you a lot about your mind and how we all work. And it then gives you some choice, which you've always had, but the consciousness brings you more of that choice, and then you can do something about it. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Please feel free to download the free gift from the Sacred Gates, which is an audio on a very special technique around helping you to become more connected to your spiritual self, and also to increase your healing abilities, mapping abilities, intuitive abilities. It's the number key 1 practice that allows you to do that. And that's just an audio there. And if you sign up to get that, you get it instantly, but you also then sign up to get the newsletter every month. At the moment at the Sacred Gates, just letting you know, we are doing our healings. If you would like a personalized healing, which is a healing based on whatever it is that you would like, we're also giving our insight readings for the price of just the healing, which is a great discount, because our insight readings are really special, and they do really help people to get to know themselves from their higher self's perspective. They're quite in-depth. They come to you as a PDF and also as an audio, and it opens up a line of communication with the Sacred Gates. You can have a chat to us and reflect further on your reading, and then your reading, what comes up in your reading, is then fed into your personalized healing. So to say, if you want to look at a particular health issue, for example, then we would do the reading is all about that, but also other things that are linked to that. And you get the reading, and then we go into the healing for you and provide you with a lot of feedback. Feel free to contact the Sacred Gates if you would like that, or if you'd like to just sign up for the newsletter, then you can opt in for that on the link below in the description box here. We have a link for that. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sacred Gates on YouTube. I really thank all the new subscribers for tuning in. Please feel free to write a message if you'd like something to be written, to do a podcast on something. That's fine. Often we're able to, so that would be great. So please feel free to contribute in that way. We love hearing from you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye for now.